Shalom. I'm a rabbi, Messianic Rabbi Gabriel Lombroso, and I'm here with my friend here, Jason.
Hello.
Jason is a pastor, right?
That's correct.
In Estacada?
Yeah, here in Estacada, Oregon.
Okay, very good. And with all that's going on in the world, especially in the Middle East, Jason was asking me some questions. So I tried to answer the best I can. Then he said, we need to make a video about this.
More people need to hear these answers because it's been really educational for me as a Christian and a pastor. But I feel like more people need to hear some of the history and from Rabbi Gabriel's perspective. So
yeah,
take it away.
And I do think that many people need to hear this because I've noticed a lot of different opinions about it. So we thought of putting our discussion on video.
Let's do it.
Hope it's a blessing to you. So, as I said, with all that's going on in the world today, especially with the war, we've all seen pictures of the recent conflict between Hamas and Israel. And many people ask, what's up? Is it the end? That's a question I always get. Is it the end? Is it the beginning of Gog and Magog? Is it the beginning of the this and that, what we read in Revelation? So I give my answer. I'm doing a series of videos right now. But I do believe that as disciples, followers of Jesus, whom I call Yeshua, if you don't mind, I'll call him Yeshua. That's what his mother called him, and it's his Hebrew name. So as disciples of Yeshua, the Messiah, we ought to be able to answer these questions properly. Actually, I consider that the ability to answer this question is a commandment in the Bible, a commandment given to us by Peter, the disciples. He says that we should be able to answer anyone about the hope which is within us. I see the world today, Israel, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, and whatever else is going on. And we still have a hope. Why do we have a hope? We need to be able to answer why. And it's a command. But for that, we need a little bit of education away from listening to politicians or denomination leaders who have a particular interpretation or agenda in their explanation. Mm-hmm. We've got to get a biblical perspective, because when we answer these questions from a biblical and historical perspective, there is no more argument. When we answer these questions from a biblical and historical perspective, we actually perform the commandment from Yeshua to proclaim the good news.
That's good. That's really good. I think the biblical perspective, because we all understand things have escalated, things have gotten, it's hard to know what is true and what's not true in the news between Hamas and Israel and the conflict there. So this biblical perspective has been educational. But my first question for you is, when it comes to thinking of history and the historical context surrounding Israel, why is it important to think generationally?
Well, sad to say, each generation is judged by future generations. Like, for example, this week, my congregation, we've been looking at the stories of Jacob and Rebekah, Esau, the story of Tamar and Judah, the stories of Joseph. And lo and behold, the natural instinct is to judge the actions of Rebekah, of Jacob, of Tamar with Judah, according to our modern 21st century American standard. And when we do that, we actually miss the lesson. Yes, we allow ourselves to judge previous generations according to our standards today. Mm-hmm. Because why? Do we think our standards are better? Some might, but not all, but also each generation has to be judged according to its own merit. What was right or wrong in those days? What is right and wrong today? So basically, we do judge each generation by its actions, reactions, and lack thereof. So, so to answer your question, when drawing judgments on the actions of a previous generation, we must make sure to avail ourselves of all facts and details from that generation. We are here today to talk about the war in Israel, a war that started with Hamas launching a terror attack of brutality and barbarity on Israel on the 7th of October. Hamas is a terrorist organization of the same temperament, character, and similar goals as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So, but what I teach history to teenagers, and one thing I always remind my students is that what we see today in Ukraine, in Russia, in China, Taiwan, and in the Middle East should not be judged by the one slide of the actions of today. We need to realize that everything, I would say most of political things that happen in the world today come from what happened in the 20th century. Mostly what triggers everything today really could be World War I. To me, I look at history today as the unfinished business of World War I.
Interesting.
Why is Hamas attacking Israel? Why is Israel there? Why is there a problem between China and Taiwan? Why is all these things, they date back. And unless we avail ourselves of that history, we're not really capable of having a proper assessment of the situation. And the same is with Israel. Why is Israel there? Why is it hated? Is it new? Is it old? Where does that come from? Who is Israel? What is Israel? Right. For that, we've got to go to the Bible.
Okay, that leads me to my next question then. What part of biblical history can help us understand all these events that are unfolding in the Middle East? Like there's so much that's happened recently, and you've told me things about that have gone hundreds and thousands of years ago. So what help us understand what events in biblical history can inform us for today?
Yeah, well, that's very important. Actually, Israel is not an ethnic group. Israel is a biological descendants from a certain family.
Biological descendants.
Yeah. That started with Abraham 4,000 years ago, give or take a couple of hundred years ago. It's like about 4,000 years ago, that's when Abraham was born. So here we go. Abraham had 8 children. First, from his first person who gave him a child, who was the servant of his wife. Her name was Hagar. He had Ishmael. Then from his wife, Sarah, he had Isaac. Then he had 6 children from a woman called Keturah. We can read that in Genesis 25. Sarah had died, and Abraham was about, if I remember, 125 years old, must have been lonely. He remarried and had 6 children. They don't make them like that no more.
No, they don't.
So he had 6 children, and actually one of them was called Midian, and he created the area of Midian, the Midianite. And one famous Midianite that we know is Jethro, who became Moses' father-in-law.
Ah, yes.
So he was a priest of Midian. That's all we know about him. He was a shepherd, but he was Moses' descendant from Abraham. So, but we're gonna stay within a a certain line of the Abrahamic descendants. We're going to stay with Isaac in the middle. So Isaac married a woman called Rebekah, from whom he had two children, twins, non-identical twins, neither in biology or character, named Jacob and Esau. From the 12 boys birthed from Jacob, we get what's called today the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
And from the tribes of Ishmael that intermarried with the tribes of Esau, we get what is known today as the Arab world.
The Arab world.
The Arab world, yes.
From Esau.
Esau and Ishmael.
Yeah, and Ishmael.
So, and I didn't say the Muslim world. Islam is a religion. Arab is an ethnic group. And many Arabs are Christians. If you go to Israel, you go to Bethlehem, you'll meet many Arab Christians, and also in Nazareth. So, and all those come from Abraham. Now, you ask, where does that problem with, it's not a problem, but yeah, that issue with Israel come from? So here we go. We have Abraham, his father was an idol maker.
Mm.
And Abraham was born actually in Iraq, in a city called Ur, not far from the place that's called Babylon. So I don't want to give the whole story, but he somehow finds God. He couldn't believe that this world around him was created by the idols that his father made in his back room. So, and he finds God. And God asks him to leave his family, to leave where he was. That's something unheard of. You don't do that in those days. You stay within your tribe. That's your security.
Right.
You know, so, but he leaves, and God talks to him and tells him something like, I will bless you. I will bless you. And I will curse anyone who curses you. By you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So, and when you read a bit further, let's see if that's the next slide. Okay, here we go. That's the next slide that he said to him. He said to him, this is, you ask where that issue comes from, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah.
It comes from right there. God says to Abraham, I am Adonai, and I'm reading from the complete Jewish Bible version. I am Adonai, who brought you from Ur Kasdim to give you this land as your possession. So it's God who tells Abraham to go to a certain place that he shows him, and he says, I am giving you this land for your possession. And then Abraham was very pragmatic. Oh, yes, good, thank you. How do I know that I will possess it?
I like what he does there is he's like prove it. Like,
yeah, show me the money.
Yeah, it's like not just a handshake. Like, I want something more.
Yeah, he says
right?
he does that a lot. You know, Abraham, very pragmatic. Promises are good, but I need a bit of substance and proof.
Right.
You know, so how do I know I will possess it? And God answers him. So this is very important. He says God is going to take him to a process that's similar today let's say you and I were going to work together, we're going to be partner with something, with a project.
Sure.
And you bring some paperwork and we make a contract of this and this and this and that.
I sign, and then I
sign.
I give it to you to sign.
Yeah, then I sign too. And then maybe we have a drink or something. I don't know.
Sure.
You know, so God's going to do that, but like they used to do it in those days. So here's what he does. As an answer to Abraham's question, how do I know I will possess it? God answers to Abraham, bring me a 3-year-old cow, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, and a dove, and a young pigeon. Abraham brought him all this, cut the animals in two, and placed the pieces opposite each other. but he didn't cut the birds in half. What is that all about? We asked that question, but Abraham knew exactly what was happening. In those days, when two people made a partnership together, whether strategic or business, they made a contract by bringing animals for sacrifice, and they cut them in two and placed them side by side, the two parts of the animal, and then both men would walk in between the animals and maybe handshake, exchange blood, I don't know. They would walk with the idea of saying, may God, may what has been done to these animals been done to me if I ever break the terms of this contract.
So if I break the terms of the contract, let me be cut in two like these animals.
Yeah.
That's a little more than spitting on your hand.
Yeah.
That's next level.
Yeah.
That had to have been really messy.
Yeah. So here God was telling Abraham, oh, you want to know? I'll make a contract with you.
Yeah, okay.
So Abraham was totally getting it. He's going to make a contract.
Totally understood.
And so in a contract, two people make a promise. Okay. So see what's going to happen next. So he put them opposite each other, but he didn't cut the bird in half. Birds of prey swooped down on the carcasses, but Abraham drove them away. As the sun was about to set, a deep sleep fell on Abraham. So Abraham, he's supposed to be awake to do a contract signing with God. How is that going to happen? But Abraham falls asleep, and a sleep fell on him. So Adonai said to Abraham, know this for certain, your descendants will be foreigners in a land that is not theirs. They will be slaves and held in oppression there for 400 years. But I will also judge that nation, that one that makes them slaves. Afterward, they will leave with many possessions. As for you, you will join your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. Only on the fourth generation will your descendants come back here, where Abraham was, when that happened, because only then will the Amorite be ripe for punishment. The Amorite were ethnic group, descendant actually from the tribes of Ishmael and Esau. And then it says, after the sun had set there was a thick darkness, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch appeared, which passed between these animals. That day, Adonai made a covenant with Abraham. And here's what he said. The difference between a contract and a covenant is that a covenant is intergenerational. It passes on to the children. It's intergenerational. So, and Abraham said God said to Abraham that day, I have given this land to your descendants. And the land we're talking about in those days used to be called Canaan, but then was called Israel. Okay. That very land where there is the problem today. God is talking, okay? So when God talks, we listen and we know it's your thing. I have given this land to your descendants from the valley of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates River, the territory of the Kenite, the Kenizi, the Kadmoni, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Rephaim, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Girgash, and the Yevuzi. If you were to put, make a map of this,
okay,
that includes not just Israel that we have today. That includes Israel you have today, plus Lebanon, a part of Syria, most of Jordan, some of Egypt, and of course the Sinai Desert. It's a much bigger place that God has given to Abraham. And this covenant is intergenerational.
Wow, it's like a will.
Yes,
it was like something that was passed on.
Yeah.
to generations.
So that's what's passed on. So what if we want to know what is the problem? In a certain way, I like to pass the buck on to God. It's like he said this, he did that. So this problem can only be solved by God.
Oh, okay.
It's not going to be solved by our politicians.
Mm.
It's going to be solved by God.
Mm.
So, see, I want to see what's the next slide to see what I have here. Okay, so that's very good.
So could we pause for a second? Could you pause it? Hit it once.